Hello, this is Yasmin Musa from the Arab Academy in Egypt, and I'll be discussing the interrelationship between restorative environments and visual preferences in university campus landscapes. Experiencing nature has become difficult, and this has led to an increase in psychological disorders such as anxiety, stress, and depression. And statistics also show this, where stress is the main cause of 60% of all human illnesses, and this is specific in university campuses. Most educational settings require high levels of attention and creativity and productivity, and this attention causes them to suffer such mental disorders. So the question is, how can designers create outdoor restorative environments for such stressful settings? So the first point I'll be discussing is restorative environments. When a person perceives an outdoor setting, usually this perception is through sensory input. Studies show that more than 80% of humans receive input through vision. That's why environments are primarily visually perceived. However, visual perception requires preferences or is controlled by preferences. And people have specific landscape preferences, and that's why the second point we'll be discussing is visual landscape preferences. Finally, for a person to perceive outdoor campus settings, there are specific requirements for campuses. These considerations will also be studied through the literature. So this is the third point. However, there are no coherent frameworks which correlate the three notions of restorative environments, visual landscape preferences, and campus design considerations. Therefore, this study focuses on creating a comprehensive assessment tool through understanding the perceptual dimension and the physical dimension of restorative campus environments through a literature review. And finally, the perceptual dimension leads to the creation of a perceptual framework, and the physical dimension will lead to the creation of a physical framework, and finally, a comprehensive assessment tool to understand better how are campus landscapes outdoors restorative or not. First of all, the physical dimension, the perceptual dimension. Restorative environments are designed to create such feelings such as contemplation or healing effects for people. That's why they're important. And there have been two theories on restorative environments, ART and SRT. The ART states that restoration takes place when a person focuses or like when they direct their attention in an involuntary way. And it has 4 stages, and there are specific points or specific qualities that are required for this attention, which are being away, fascination, extent, compatibility. However, the stress reduction theory developed by Roger Ulrich states that it's a rapid response to the total configurational properties of the scene. And they're based on preference judgments. So this takes us to the second point, preferences, the visual landscape preferences. So if a person is stressed and they're exposed to a restorative environment, they're more likely to become healed. There have been also 2 frameworks. The first is Roger Ulrich's model, and the second is a developed version of it by Tiviet. So this is the one we'll be using. Mainly, many different theories were studied using this in this framework, and they've developed or created 9 visual landscape preference indicators. These indicators are complexity, coherence, disturbance, stewardship, imageability, visual scale, naturalness, and ephemera. So this is a summary of the 9 visual concepts and their dimensions, definitions, landscape attributes, and potential indicators. Here's an example for stewardship. And here's another example for imageability. So, however, when we're talking about perception, there are specific variables that have to be considered, whether it's cultural, individual differences, or physical landscape. And these variables cannot be ignored because they might alter the results. So mainly most of the variables from the literature were grouped into this table, and they were accordingly classified into four different categories or four different types: safety, activities, familiarity, and daily accessibility. Second is the physical dimension. First, we'll be discussing the campus physical dimension in general, and then we'll go through the specific facts concerning the meso and the micro level constituents of restorative campus landscapes. The first level is the macro level, where studies have shown that campus morphology has major planning problems such as insufficient square footage, diminished quality of buildings, facilities, placelessness, and so on. So really, campuses do need development. Meso level, there are different configurations, spatial configurations for meso levels in university campuses, such as a home base, front porch, front yard, backyard, and a common turf. And finally, the different types of landscape elements, which include soft landscape, hard landscape, water bodies, plant materials, and man-made elements. So according to these classifications, we moved on to the restorative campus physical dimension. First is the meso level. Based on the different campus outdoor spaces, general design recommendations were added using Claire Cooper Marcus's framework. And according to the micro level constituents, there are different landscape elements that, if are present in outdoor spaces, can enhance the restorative effects a place has, such as water features, native vegetation, landmarks, balconies, shade structures, as you can see here. So this table was hence developed with the 18 landscape constituents and then their restorative qualities and their design considerations. So for example, this part, a sensory engaging plant palette helps in being away and creating a positive distraction. And the design considerations for it is it should have foliage that easily moves to draw visual attention and inviting tactile qualities. Finally, this is the developed perceptual framework according to the restorative concepts, visual preferences, and spatial usage dimensions or variables. And this is the physical framework according to the meso level and the micro level constituents of campus landscapes. Finally, these two frameworks have been merged into a comprehensive assessment tool, and this tool shows the relationships between. For example, for being away, if there are water features, then it enhances the quality of being away strongly. However, if there are no, for example, landmarks, identity or place-based relationships will be impacted. So this framework can be used to assess the shortcomings of campuses and understand how restorative their outdoor spaces are. The perceptual dimension requires individual opinions, while the physical dimension requires visual surveys. So it doesn't need questionnaires, so it only needs professional opinions. And while using these two frameworks, one should consider the variables that can alter perception, such as gender, need for restoration, age, economics, professional experience. Finally, the notions of restorative environments and visual preferences can significantly improve people's lives, specifically in university campuses where people are constantly stressed. This can also be used to provide information on shortcomings of landscape campuses and deliver guidelines on how to create better open spaces. However, further studies are required to implement it and prove its validity in different landscape settings. And further research is also required to develop a method for statistical analysis using the proposed tool. Thank you.